Welcome, everybody. We're here at a special edition of Retail's Most Wanted. A special guest today, Dan Merkle from FaceFirst. Dan, tell us a little bit about you and how you got involved with FaceFirst.
Well, thought I was retired actually a few years ago, and a number of the board members and investors at FaceFirst asked me to come in and kind of help them take a look. 2020 was a pretty tough year for our company and the country at large. And it was really around a reset of kind of what we do going forward. And so I came in and became chairman and CEO in early 21, and we've been on a tear ever since then.
Congratulations. Super fascinating stuff. Tell us a little bit about the technology and how you guys are looking at facial recognition differently.
Yeah, and I would say that, one of the things that I think people have a hard time understanding is the difference between the technology and the use cases. The technology is widespread. We use it to open up our iPhones. We're using it in the airports. It's a very fundamental, accurate way of identifying individuals. And but there's a lot of different ways to do it. The one-to-one stuff, like your phone, that's a kind of an easy case. The stuff that we do is large-scale, uncooperative image capture, which means people walking through crowds, those sorts of things, or an entrance to a store. We do it real time, and we do it with really high accuracy. So all the four things that are really difficult to do in the application is what we focused on, and that's where we bring value to our customers.
It's fascinating, really, and as we focus technologies and deploying technologies specific to organized retail crime in the retail space. Talk to us a little bit about how you're deploying the technology in retail today and where you're going in the future.
Yeah, the change in 2020 was not only our country went through an economic turmoil, but that transition really how some people were reacting to the environments they live in, and therefore thinking that stealing is okay. And they got to be pretty good at that. And pretty soon they started getting organized around that. And so what we have today is an enormously impactful negative set of characters costing us all by stealing and basically making it that their profession. And so what we do is help identify those few individuals. And commonly, you'll see individuals will be in a particular store, whether it's a grocery store or hardware store or electronic store, whatever it happens to be. And they walk out with a few $1,000s worth of goods and they sell it, and then they've done it 7 more times in the day. And so what we're able to do is aggregate those same individuals and what their real impact is. So we're really trying to impact the top of the pyramid. Yep. The folks that are just mostly impactful, and that's very successful.
Dan, it's interesting to hear you talk about how this impacts us all. Oftentimes with ORC, people tend to believe that it's a victimless crime, right? But how ORC affects our communities, it's just kind of fascinating how that trickles down all the way to each of us, whether we're paying more at the checkout per item or loss of jobs or, heaven forbid, shutting down stores. It's really impacting our communities. I would think that we would be open to any and all solution as we approach these type problems. Talk to us a little bit about some of the headwinds you've experienced as you're kind of going from 2021, joining the company, through 2024. What are some of those headwinds like?
Yeah, and let me answer another piece you just brought up, and that's the impact, because I think we tend to think about the economic impact, and that's pervasive. But there's a couple other pieces here, and that is, as you said, we're closing stores.
Yep.
There are grocers that are closing stores in high crime areas and creating food deserts. That is a travesty. That is creating victims that is needless if we can actually protect those communities. So that's an impact that I think we can't overlook. And the other one is really our employees. I mean, you've seen the surveys recently about a vast majority of employees in retail don't feel safe in their job. Now, that's a terrible thing, to go to work every day and not feel safe and that you can do your job. And witnessing people who are impacting your business and your customers, there's the emotional and human side of this beyond just the economics that I think that we should not discount. But your question about, what are the headwinds we're seeing? And I would say that the biggest headwind that we have of all technologies is misinformation. It's just simply not accurate, and there's various folks who have perhaps agendas to create some of that misinformation. And the way I've tried to talk to people is when you're assessing any sort of information coming in, I candidly, I put it in 4 different buckets. And the first is facts. And I come from a scientific background, so I kind of use facts as my major determinant factor. Not everybody does. And then there's secondly is opinions. And opinions are really helpful because they're reflective of an individual's experience, their education, but it also oftentimes gets their biases engaged in their opinion. But it's still a very valuable element to be listening to and taking into account. But the two that are the last are, I think, we're driving a lot of our misinformation is fear and aspirations. And sometimes I hear statements around facial recognition that are completely just fear-based. And we need to address that more factually, in my opinion. So I think that the headwinds are around, let's have a reasonable conversation around benefits, risks, and how do we effectively and accountably and transparently manage those risks.
I love that. And starting off, you mentioned even our iPhones, right? For me to open my iPhone, I'm using it every day. It becomes kind of this natural motion. Like a lot of disruptive technologies, you kind of run into this speed bump on the front end. But if I'm a guy that says, listen, I'm fearful of technology and facial recognition, I read these things that happen in different countries, and put me at ease. Dan, why should I say, you know what, I trust this one, right? Is there an easy statement, or is this just more about how do we educate the masses?
I think there are clearly areas of governance and compliance and accountability that we have to build in the deployments, the use cases that we have for these things. And I think that there is legitimate fear that technologies can be used in adverse ways.
Yeah.
But I would say that there's another piece of this that we're a little bit naive to, perhaps conveniently naive. And that is, you say you use your iPhone, okay? Well, let's just think about the amount of data that's being collected on you by your credit card people, Amazon, your cell phone provider, and on and on and on. There is a digital dossier being accumulated on all of us.
Yeah.
Now, we find that that's pretty beneficial to us. We like the advantage of what that does. But we've also basically said, I'm willing to have that data collected because I benefit from it, and I'm okay with the risk that that poses to me. I think we should have that same conversation on these larger deployed technologies, particularly facial recognition. What value do I get out of facial recognition being applied in a larger retail environment, as an example? And the answer is, if you have not committed anything against the company, your data is anonymized and purged. It's not even there. We don't even know who you are.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you've been a person that's been stealing from this store on a regular basis and all their neighbor stores, it would probably be beneficial for us to know who you are and what we might be able to do to stop that impact.
Isn't that what we're all trying to do?
I would hope so.
I would hope so too. Dan, you made a comment earlier about the people side, and I love that, right? The humanity. Sometimes we measure things based on a bottom line economic, or we look at a spreadsheet, but in the business that we're in, here at NRF Protect, everybody's here really with a primary goal in life safety, in the humanity of what we do. Tell me a little bit about the mission of FaceFirst.
Yeah, I think that really what we're on is to create a safer environment, and to do, though, in a very accountable and transparent way. And so I don't mind at all having hard conversations about the impact of the technology. We've actually built into our product several feature sets that ensure compliance with what we believe would ultimately be prosecutable cases. We also build in guidelines and standard operating procedures for our customers because they're unfamiliar sometimes with the level of diligence that should be applied to particular pieces of information. And so we're trying to help people become comfortable and use this technology that has enormous benefits in ways that they can feel comfortable with and that their customers can feel comfortable with, and that we make a positive impact on the community they're operating in.
Dan, super grateful you'd come by and spend some time with us today. Congratulations on FaceFirst, the success you're having, and much more future success is our wish for you. Any final words?
Well, I appreciate what you guys are doing, and having this conversation around a larger ecosystem about how we impact things, both from all the way from our customer bases to the law enforcement to the communities we serve in. I just really appreciate the efforts you guys are making for that.
Thank you, Dan. Ladies and gentlemen, Dan Merkle with FaceFirst.